too horrible to be true, but a recent study says an astounding 30,000 Americans a year wake up during surgery. It's called anesthesia awareness, and it happened to our next guest. Please welcome Carol Weir and Kelly Haapala. Hi, Carol. Hi. Hi, Carol. Hi, Kelly. I just want to caution the audience that some of what you hear may be really, really disturbing. But I want to ask you, Carol, 10 years ago, you had gone into surgery to correct your cornea. Can you tell us what happened?
They were planning to remove my eye, and I initially went to sleep. The next thing I heard was disco music, and I thought the surgery was over. And the next thing I heard was my surgeon saying, cut deeper and pull harder.
Oh, when they were saying this, what were you thinking?
Well, it only took me a couple of seconds to realize I was in trouble here, and I tried to move any part of my body, my fingers, my toes, my mouth, my eyes, anything.
Were you given a paralytic?
Yes.
Okay, what did that feel like?
Well, I didn't know at the time what it felt like, but later on in the surgery, when the doctor said she's moving, I received 2 doses of paralytic, which feels like ignited jet fuel going through your body.
Yeah. So and you couldn't verbalize either? Did you?
Couldn't speak. I was screaming at the top of my lungs. I was praying. I was yelling. I was trying to crawl off the table. There was nothing that I could do.
I'm sorry to just ask you this, but what kind of pain did you feel? Because they kept going.
I am lucky that I'm one of the 50% of the patients who don't feel the cutting pain. But that paralytic drug is so painful that it's the basis of the lethal injection challenge in the United States Supreme Court.
Oh, gosh. Now, when did the doctors finally realize she's not out, she's awake?
I was still in the operating room, and once they took the tube out of my throat, I was screaming, I was awake while you took my eye out.
And reaction? Yeah, what was their reaction?
I don't remember, but I am told by friends that only an orderly took me out of the operating room, ran me to a locked elevator, and took me to the other end of the hospital, and my family was denied access to me.
I'm sorry that even happened, and Kelly, your story's not too far off of that either. You went in to have surgery on a hip that was shattered, right? You were in a car accident?
Exactly.
What happened?
I was in a head-on car accident, and my hip, the femur was shattered, everything was shattered in there, and so I went in for surgery to have the socket replaced, and they brought me in, wheeled me in, had me count down, everything was normal, and then all of a sudden I woke up, and I didn't know if I was dreaming or what was going on, but then I could hear them talking about, oh my gosh, she's so young, this happened to her, and they're, pass me this, pass me that, and I just was frightened. It was more horrific than the car accident I was in, and I didn't know if I was even going to survive being awake at that time.
Were you also given a paralytic? Could you not move?
That eventually wore off. First I woke up, then I started feeling the pain, and it was like hot poker being jammed into me, and I'm pulling and tugging and trying to do everything I could to let them know I was awake.
And did they, obviously they acknowledged that you were awake at some point?
Eventually, when the paralytic wore off on me, I just started flailing. My arms and legs just went everywhere, and they had to dive on me, and they just started screaming, put her back under.
And so they then did put you back under? That was
yes. Yeah, they put me back under, and then when I woke up in my room after the surgery was done, I started crying to my family that this had happened, and they couldn't understand it, so they called for the surgeon to come in, and he said, yeah, it happened to her, but you know what, the surgery went fine, we put her back under, let's just deal with her recovery now.
So let's just move forward and forget about the pain that you were awake for in the midst of this surgery.
Exactly.
I am sorry.
We have Dr. Donald Matthews with us, and he's an anesthesiologist at St. Vincent's Hospital here in New York. Dr. Matthews, can you tell us how this kind of thing happens?
Well, there's several reasons. Sometimes the drugs that we use to cause unconsciousness depress heart function. So sometimes we get into a position where we have to, not these situations, where we have to choose between a patient who might survive the surgery and have awareness and a patient who would not have awareness but not do so well. Sometimes the patients don't tell us everything we need to know about them, whether they use a lot of alcohol, whether they use illicit drugs, whether they take a Xanax every night to go to sleep. There's certain things that we don't find out that would make a patient's requirement be higher than normal that we need to know.
Just for people that are, people go into surgery all the time. I mean, how often does this really happen? Is it something everyone needs to be really worried about?
It's actually very rare. Scientists who do this investigation, when you ask people several times after surgery about whether they remember anything about the operating room, 1 to 2 people per 1,000 will have something that they remember when they should have been asleep.
Okay.
And that ranges from just brief conversation of listening to a comment or something all the way up to these longer and more horrific situations like we have here.
Was there any legal action taken? Did you either of you decide to sue or pursue any sort of lawsuit?
We went through all of the preliminary stuff and got to court to set a trial date, and the judge said, "This is the most stupid story I have ever heard in my life. If you think that a jury is going to believe you were awake when the doctor says you were asleep, this will not be heard in my court. You will settle today."
And you settled. You felt that you had no choice.
I don't even know what to say. Dr. Matthews, what can be done to prevent awareness from happening? You think you're going to go in and be under, so what can be done to stop this?
Well, one thing is to have a very frank and honest discussion with your anesthesiologist. Tell them everything about you, what you do, what you use, if you use illicit drugs, if you drink a lot of alcohol. If you've had a relative to whom this has occurred, mention that, because there may be a genetic component in some patients that there's a connection. We have also in our field now a new generation of monitors that measure brain waves. And we have our own hot topic in anesthesiology about whether or not these monitors should be used when we take care of people. At St. Vincent's in New York, we brought them in 9 years ago into our operating room because we thought the information we were going to get from them would be helpful in taking care of people. But not every anesthesiologist believes this to be true. And if you look at our literature, there's some studies that show this monitoring is good, and some studies that show that maybe it isn't so useful in preventing awareness.
So thank you so much, Dr. Matthews. And I just want to ask you really quickly, how's your faith? We were talking about your faith. How has this played a part in...
Well, it's changed my life. I believe this is why I'm on this earth. 5 weeks ago, I was in a coma, and I believe that's why I pulled through. I said, I have work to do.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for coming on. For more information on anesthesia awareness, you can check our website, and we'll be right back.